I, 23 years old female, had S_X with a guy while my BF was abroad. I've never taken interest to online dating. But I decided to because my BF was stationed in Germany and I was bored and lonely. I was just fooling around with all the apps. I thought it would just be harmless flirting. Little did I know that I'd be losing control and having S_X with someone on the first date. His name was Steve. Steve was great at flirting and he gave me all the laughs and attention I was looking for. After a week of chatting, he asked if we could meet for a coffee. We decided to meet after work for dinner around 6 p.m. I dressed up nice and was showing a bit of cleavage. I had no plans of having S_X, but I wanted to tease him a little. We were drinking a bit too. The vibe was amazing, and one thing led to another. He dropped me home, and I invited him inside to have some wine. I pretended to fall on him, to which he caught me and we exchanged a look. I went to the kitchen to grab some wine, and he had pressed up behind me and started rubbing my shoulders, which I loved. I turned towards him, and we started K_SSIN like there was no tomorrow. I slowly put my hands inside his pants. Then, I got down on my knees and undid his zipper. His P_knees popped out, and I was quite surprised at how big it was. This made me so excited. I started S_king it, and was so eager that his P_knees was filling my mouth completely. I love how he started M_anin, which made me S_ck it even better. Steve then picked me up and threw me on the couch. He slowly undid my pants. He started K_ssing my V_Gina, and Lee_ked me all around. I kept M_anin. Steve baby, that's so hot, keep going. I told him to stop teasing and to just F_ck me already. He didn't have a condom and I told him F_ck it did anyways. I was Sue H_RNY at this point. He then spread my legs open, and inserted the tip of his P_knees while he K_SSED me. It had been a long time since I had a P_knees inside of me. Even though this was a first date, I didn't care. He pushed his P_knees inside me, and I slowly wrapped my legs completely around him. He thrusted and I started M_anin like crazy because the feeling was so good. While he was thrusting, he grabbed one boob, which made me ask him to do it faster and harder. He then pulled out and came directly on my Brie_STS. I had already came twice but he hadn't stopped. Afterwards, we K_SSED and slept naked together. I never told my BF about Steve. However, I did end up meeting Steve for another steamy session afterwards. After the second meeting, we stopped seeing each other. However, I will always have fond memories of this fun encounter. Second story. Wife's friend finally gave me some. So my wife has a hot friend, call her Katie. She's a few years younger than me, 42, she's 35. She is a little SL_TTY and very flirty with me. Her and I have always had a little flirty relationship when my wife isn't around. She'll shake her _SS in my face, or when we're in her pool with my family she wears a tiny B_kini that hardly covers her N_PPLE or _SS. She a brunette with a beautiful brown eyes. Perky C Brie_STS and a great _SS. So a few weeks ago she came over for a few drinks and chat with my wife. Wearing just a pair of well-fit jeans and a hoodie. We all got drinking and they started dancing around. Wife went into the kitchen and Katie keeps dancing, but now she's in front of me shaking her _SS at me. She gets closer and closer till I can't help it and reach out and grab both her cheeks and grab them and give her a little slap. She turns and smiles at me. The night continues and we are sitting drinking. Katie uses her phone and I memorize her passcode. Both the girls decide to go to the bar for more fun and head upstairs to freshen up. I seize the moment and open her phone and look through her photos. I know, not my finest moment, but I was H_RNY and wanted to see what was under her cloths. I didn't have to scroll long to find a handful of amazing pics she had taken of herself. I sent them to myself and deleted the message. A minute later Katie comes downstairs while I'm in the kitchen cleaning up. She's dancing to the music and she dances over to me and grinds on me. I took that as a good sign and I grabbed her waist and pulled her tight. She continued grinding on me and I reached up and cupped her perky T_its. Then moved down to her _SS. She turned around and bent over and I pulled her back up standing. I lifted her hands up over her head and while she danced. I then lifted her shirt up enough to expose her sports B_raw and massages her brie_sts. She pushed into me more and I lifted her B_raw up and punched her pierced N_pple and played with them. She turned around so I could see them and I had to S_ck on them. She was still dancing as I played. She took one of her hand and grabbed my hard C_ck and smiled at me and used her other hand to guide my hand down to her jeans. I reached down and unhooked her button and unzipped her fly. She pulled her B_raw back over her amazing T_its along with her hoodie. As soon as her jeans were loose I had to know if she had a thong on. So I reached down the back of her jeans and felt her bare _SS. I grabbed her _SS and massaged it with one hand and moved the other one to the front to feel her bald-shaven P_SSY. I looked her in the eyes as she smiled at me and I reached further down sliding my phi_ger between her lips. I continued and used my other phi_ger to spread her P_SSY and slowly phi_ger her. She pulled my hand up and put my phi_gers in her mouth tasting herself. I could feel my C_ck throbbing as she did that. I reached back down and slid my phi_ger inside her phi_gering her as deep as I could. Suddenly we could hear the stairs creak and I pulled my phi_gers out and she fixed her pants. My heart raced and as she fixed herself I cleaned my phi_gers by S_ck in all her tasty juices off of them. As they put their shoes on I could now see Katie's blue thong sticking out as well as my wife's red thong that poked out of her jeans. My wife gave me a K_SS and she walked out of the house. Katie put her vest on and as she walked past me she grabbed my C_ck hard and blew me a K_SS. I quickly checked to see that the photos I got were on my phone. And they were. I hope I get the chance to see her privately again. Third story. Long way home. Amber and I were out on a date and we had taken her mom's car since hers was blocked in. We were both in our mid to late 20s and had been dating several months and were enjoying a steady diet of amazing S_X. We hadn't seen each other in over 2 weeks, so needless to say I had been watching a lot of porn and we had masturbated on the phone with each other a time or two. I hadn't blown my load in 2 days and wanted be as H_RNY as possible when I saw her to C_M all over her T_its or belly. Over dinner we could feel the S_shul tension rising. At one point I had reached over and run my hand up her leg, over her P_NTS and rubbed her P_SSY through them. I could feel the heat from her perfect P_SSY radiating through her P_NTS and my C_CK hardened immediately. Throughout dinner our eye contact went from, "I'm so happy to see you," to, "I can't wait to F_CK you." We left the restaurant and it was lightly raining. We were about 10 minutes from her home where she lived with her mom and grandma. There was no way even with sneaking around we could do anything beyond some fing_ring or a hand job. A blow job was the best case if we got lucky. I was driving and was going slow to make the ride last as long as possible. I was rubbing my hand on her leg, brushing her P_SSY through her P_NTS with my fing_RS. She was breathing a little heavier each time I did it and her P_SSY felt like a furnace. I looked over and her eyes screamed, F_CK me, and without saying a word I pulled over to the side of the road. Without hesitation she unzipped her P_NTS and pulled them down below her knees, revealing a see-through red lace thong. I could see her C_lit swollen like a button pushing gently on the front of her P_NTIES glistening. I reached over and pulled her P_NTIES to the side, revealing her beautiful smooth P_SSY and ran my fing_RS down her slit and into her hot wet tunnel. My C_CK was at full attention, pressing hard against my P_NTS. It was too tight in the car to bend over and taste her P_SSY, so kept fing_ring her, and she pushed her hands against the seat with her legs spread, looking at me with her eyes begging for my C_CK. I looked back at her and said, I have to F_CK you right now, I can't take it anymore. Heavily breathing, she said with sigh, yeah, I need your C_CK. She crawled in between the front seats, threw all her mom's stuff on the floorboard, unbuttoned her blouse and slid her P_NTS and P_NTIES off. As I walked around the car in the rain, I unzipped my P_NTS and pulled them down to my knees after opening the door, releasing my throbbing C_CK, and crawled in the back seat. Normally we used C_ND_Ms, but my thirst for L_Street and her P_SSY was well beyond caring. When I got in, her back was against the door, perky T_it's exposed, N_PP less fully erect and legs spread with her glistening wet P_SSY waiting for me. We looked at each other, and without hesitation I slid my C_CK inside her tight-soaked P_SSY. I rammed my C_CK hard and deep in her as she let out a whimper as I took out my S_shul frustration on her tight P_SSY and cervix. After pounding her hard for a minute or two, I pulled out so I wouldn't C_M too fast. When I pulled out, I rubbed the head of my D_CK on her C_lit. Her head went back and she breathed deep, digging her hands into the seat, trying to decide if she wanted more stimulation or less, moving her hips back and forth. She rocked her head forward, looked at me and then down at my C_CK, flipping her C_lit. She had a moment of sobriety and said, S_hit, you're not wearing a condom. She snapped back to the moment, F_CK it, you feel so good, just don't C_M in me. I continued to rub the head of my C_CK on her C_lit and up and down he soaked slit. She dug her hands into the seat again and pressed her back against the door and slightly arched, pressing her slit against my C_CK. Her body began to tremble, the windows were completely fogged as she began to org_s. F_CK, F_CK, she screamed. Her juices began to flow, soaking my C_CK and the seat as she arched even more and started to shake uncontrollably. We were both sweating and she let out a scream of pure ecstasy as she came and collapsed into the seat, breathing hard with the look of S_X still in her eyes. She reached out for me, pulled me to her. My C_CK slid into her now soaked little tight F_CK hole. F_CK me, she whispered as my C_CK was engulfed by her P_SSY. I started to F_CK her in a steady rhythm with the full length of C_CK. After a minute or two of F_CKing, I could feel my B_LLS filling with C_M. I wanted to C_M in her so bad, but knew I couldn't. I was going to wait until the last possible moment to pull out of her perfect P_SSY. I continued to F_CK her, my C_CK gliding in and out as she SQ_eased my A_SS. My C_CK would glide completely out of her P_SSY, then right back into her tight little hole with barely any friction. C_M was starting to rise slowly through my shaft, and I was doing everything I could to hold it back as long as possible. She was beginning to build to an org_s again, but there was no way I was going to last. She grabbed my A_SS, pulling me into her deeper. I started to M_ and feeling the pressure of the C_M fighting against me, holding it back while I felt her pulling me into her deeper. I wasn't sure if she was going to let me pull out or not. I could barely hold back anymore and knew I was about to explode. In my head I counted my THR_STS deeper and harder each time. 3, 2, 1, the head of C_CK brushed her cervix, and as pulled my C_CK back I could feel the C_M rushing through my shaft uncontrolled. At the moment her lips brushed the side of C_CK's head, exiting her P_SSY. I exploded over her completely shaven P_SSY and onto her belly. I leaned back, my C_CK still hard and slightly pulsating and dripping with C_M and her sweet P_SSY juices onto the seat. I looked at her, covered with my huge thick load I had been saving for her. Her beautiful P_SSY was covered in C_M, but her now gaping P_SSY was pure pink surrounded by white C_M dripping around it slowly. Her flat little belly was glistening and covered. After a minute we caught our breath. "I was afraid you were going to make me C_M in you," I said. She replied, "Well, I wanted you to real bad, was afraid even though I just got on the pill." I sighed as she smiled at me with a devilish grin. "How are we going to clean this up?" I said. She looked at me and scooped up some C_M with her fing_R and licked them clean. We wiped up the seats with some napkins we found, and then she grabbed her thong and wiped the rest of the C_M from her P_SSY and belly with them and put them back on.